Doesn't look like there's any public in the room or online. All right. We have the approval of the December 17th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right. Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Novoychuk?
Yes.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Kasha?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Volano?
Yeah, yes.
I'm a yes. 1, 2, 3. 8-0.
Abstain for me.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mark you down.
And David just joined.
Perfect. Oh. David, you want to vote on the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he wants to vote?
Squared.
All right, so we're 901. Catch anybody else? All right. Invoices.
You want a motion?
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Oh, you see it? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we can move all the Danisco invoices as
All
one.
together?
Yeah.
Okay, I move we approve Danisco invoice 10130, 10131, 10132, and 10133. Would you like me to read the amounts?
I'm good. They're in the backup.
I'll second it.
Any questions, comments? Just tell me if you see a hand. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye, yes.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Kasha?
Yes.
Mr.
I
Cuna?
heard it.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Volano?
Not overspending.
Yes.
Ms. Priest?
Yes.
10-0.
It's a set
Then we have a Dorn Whittier invoice.
Yeah, I move we approve the Doran Whittier invoice number 28 in the amount of $18,915.
I'll second it.
Okay, questions? Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Wojcik?
Yes.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Kasha?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Volano?
Yes.
Ms. Priest?
Yes.
I'm a yes, also 10-0.
Can we just go back to the first Danisco one? I just wondered what it was for. It's for $346,200.
DD, I think, is the detailed design. It's like their regular
Is that what it is?
services.
Part of the phase that we're in, so it's the general, it's our general fee for the phase we're in, which is design development.
All right, thank you.
And speaking of that, design update?
Okay, Neil is going to drive, and I will start us off. So, schedule-wise, so we have been in the design development phase of this project for the last 3 months, and next week we'll be wrapping up our drawings for cost estimating. So cost estimating, the process takes about 3 weeks. We'll have cost estimates, we'll have 2 estimators estimating the project, one that is contracted with Dorn Whittier, and then ours. We went through this for schematic design. So after reconciliation, we'll have a set budget. We're anticipating a number that we will also provide a list of potential value management items should we come in over the budget that we established during schematic design. So in the past 3 months, we've shared a bunch of images with you all. Last month, sorry, Jen, we missed you, but we brought all sorts of materials to share. That was kind of a fun show and tell. And what we wanted to just share tonight is basically where we are with all the decisions that have been made, where we will be in the next phase. So the next phase after Cost estimating is complete and reconciled. We submit the package to the MSBA at the end of February, and we start the construction documents phase. That doesn't mean that the design is completely set in every aspect of the building. It's where we start to really design the details of how things are put together, making sure it's constructible, making sure we're being efficient with materials. And that process is a little bit iterative as well, where we may make some changes, some tweaks here and there, but what we want to share with you tonight is where we are with the design. It's not, the building is not going to change based on the feedback that we've received from you to date. So,
Oops.
right, so for simplicity, we just wanted to provide this list, right? So in a snapshot, where are we with the site? We've had many meetings with you all, with the site folks, with the traffic folks. And at our last traffic meeting, the site circulation was basically approved. So what is established is the vehicular pedestrian circulation. That's the roadways, the sidewalks, the pathways. Where the fields are and we have paths, that may end up tweaking a little bit because the fields are currently being really designed in more detail. So the grading's going to be impacted a little, so there might be a little bit of tweaking there. The parking is established. We have parking in the front of the building as well as the back. The playground allocations are set. So basically where we're going to have the playground equipment and what's going to be the rubberized poured-in-place surfacing. The amount of that area is pretty much set. The shape might get tweaked a little. We're still working on the playground equipment design. So at the next phase, we'll be really kind of refining that and working with you all, working with a smaller group, and looking at the budget as well. So that area might be reshaped a little bit. But in terms of allocation, what's soft, what's hard, what's going to be painted, that's pretty much established. Let's see, the outdoor learning areas, those locations are established and the components have been identified, but there is a lot of room for developing that design. We know that we want the paved areas to be a little bit different than asphalt. We know we want seating, we know we want a board of some sort, so those details are going to be established at the next phase. The playfields are set. We've had meetings regarding that. The planting, general locations, and allocation is pretty much set, but there is going to be a few more meetings. We're going to meet with DPW as well as Parks and Rec to really refine the plant material. We'll get feedback from them, from you all, and then that will be folded into a final set of documents that gets submitted to the Conservation Commission and Planning Board. And then finally, site signage. We've located, but the design of that is not yet fully established. So next phase, there's a lot more to happen, but in terms of where things are located and the shape of the site is pretty much set. So here is the site, just to kind of remind you all. The circulation, we've discussed a lot, and where crosswalks are established. Kids are going to, or folks, pedestrians are going to walk up Fox Hill or Westwood, and they're going to travel clockwise around the circle. The crosswalks are established, the drop-off points, and again, you'll see the fields are pretty well located. And we're still shaping certain areas next to the fields where we're going to try to balance the amount of dirt, the soil, so that we're trying to limit the amount of dirt we're hauling off-site just to save a little bit of money. Okay, next. This is just a very diagrammatic drawing showing you all the grass area. So everything that is bright green is going to be a seed mix of some sort. Around the fields area, it's pretty much lawn. We're going to carry as much lawn as possible because it's a lot easier to maintain than plant beds. What you'll see around the building, which is kind of a beige color, is really plant beds with mulch. So where it's right next to the building and there's small areas, it's a lot easier to maintain that than it is to maintain a lawn for mowing. And then in the circle areas, it's going to be primarily mulch plants that are going to survive salt and snow, as well as a couple of trees just to kind of soften that area. So our landscape architects have put together a plant list, but we want to vet that with a smaller group, and then we'll bring that to you all. All right, so with regard to the building design, so much of that is already established. We know it's a two-story. I mean, the building really is designed in all respects except for a lot of the finishes inside the building. So when we last met in December, we brought materials for the exterior. We have some images for that, and what we know is that we know the proportions of those materials on the building. We know that it's primarily masonry. We know generally the colors, and we know that there are going to be accent panels of metal as well as phenolic. So as we get into the next phase, which is construction documents, not much of that is going to change. So, but again, as we're looking at details, how the windows are matching up with the other materials, that's going to change a little bit. We actually start to look at coursing of the brick material, and so we try the best we can to design the location of the window so that it's a full, it's minimizing cuts. It not only saves us time and material, but it really is aesthetically kind of the way to go. Questions?
When we were looking at the materials last time, the one that I think you had on the back of the building, kind of a wood look, will we at some point in time decide how much of that to use or not use?
We have, we've looked at the balance of that, and we can definitely revisit that. That's a very small area, so in terms of impacting the whole design, yes.
I can only speak for myself. I prefer the brick look to that. To me, that looks kind of, I don't know, I just don't care for it, but I'm one person, and there's a whole committee that could weigh in on that.
Yeah, we can definitely provide some options in that area.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right, so basic materials and application, where the material is going has been established. The exterior fenestration. Fenestration is really the windows and window walls. What does the building look like in terms of transparency? That balance has already been established, and we need to do that pretty early on because it really feeds into our energy model. So we try to keep a proportion of 22% of window to overall wall ratio, and that really helps us in terms of energy. The massing of the building, the massing means, what is the building shaped in terms of heights? How does the roof look? What's one story, what's two story? That's established. And then finally, the canopy design is, I think we've talked about that a lot. So we had presented many options early on, and it looks like we have settled on one that is kind of a midway, which matches very closely to the length of the existing Fox Hill canopy. We are still looking at colors, so again, some of these features, some of these components are still going to be tweaked in terms of the actual shape of the columns and the colors, but for the most part, that design is set. And then in terms of the building plans and the locations of spaces, that has been set. We've been tweaking that a little bit, meeting with David, just kind of looking at how we can clean up some of the spaces to make them more efficient. So really the next phase is about materials and application of the materials inside the building and design of some of the fun features that we had talked about early on, which are graphic walls that can make the school a teaching element. And we're going to be working also with a science department to kind of see how we can incorporate some of the science curriculum into the building. Oh, you know what? Just wanted to call out for the next phase. We'll be sharing more about the lighting design inside the building, because that really does impact kind of the how the building feels spatially. And we'll also be looking more into details on the furniture and the equipment for the school. Okay, so here's a bird's eye view. What you can see from the building is that the roof is going to be designed to hold PVs, photovoltaic panels, whether that is an element that the town purchases or is contracted with a PPA for is to be established, but we know that the building is going to hold the PVs on the roof. The structure is designed for that. What we don't have drawn are the canopies on the parking lot. That, again, is going to require a little bit more discussion. And the canopy is set as drawn, and what we also have drawn and in the design currently are the solar shades that are on the south-facing windows. And here's a view from the entry drive at the circle. What we have established is that there will be a sign on the site, on the lawn of the triangle. How that actually reads is to be established, and the actual material we're thinking would be a stone veneer, but again, that's something that we'll continue to develop and we'll bring to you at the next phase. And here we have, I don't know that you'll ever see the building in its full length like this, but we wanted to show you all of the materials and the relationship they have to each other. And again, you'll see kind of the massing in terms of it, for the most part, being 2 stories with some elements that are a little higher, which is the library, the media center in the center, to really bring your eye to it. That's on the upper image. That's the front of the school. And then the lower image is the back side. And Chris, you did mention, so you can kind of see that brown area, which is kind of the wood look. There's not a lot of it, but
Right.
we can definitely continue to look at the proportions of that and see what it might look like if it's a warm brick instead. We just, design is really subjective, right? So people react differently to different materials. Wood seems to be a really nice warm material, but brick is also beautiful natural material. So I think there's going to be a balance, and we're happy to continue to look at that back elevation with you all at the next phase. And then the upper image here is the bus drop-off entrance. We've looked at how to really pull your eye to it. We've kind of established this nice, well, on our drawings, we show the canopy as green to kind of pull your eye, but again, this color will be looked at further at the next phase. But we thought we'd match some of the colors on the main part of the building to the side, just to make sure that, it's kind of a marker. This is a main entrance of some sort, and it really speaks to the other main entrance on the south side of the school. And then the gym is the image on the bottom, which is, we're going to be looking at glass at the next phase in terms of what that glass might look like, because we want to allow a lot of natural daylight in, but we want to make sure there isn't glare. So we're doing those studies to make sure that the overhangs are providing some protection from the sun, but also what we're going to look at what we need to do for the actual glass. There's many different ways we could treat that. And then the canopy, I don't think we need to talk any more about it, but thank you for all your feedback. It's been really, really helpful. And then this is just a summary of the materials that we had brought last time. So this being a publicly bid project, we specify a basis of design for materials with colors. But once the project is bid and awarded to a contractor, we really need to allow for the competition. So what gets submitted from that contractor may not be exactly the same material that we're designing to, but what we do is we provide them 3 equal manufacturers that would meet the design criteria that we establish. So if it's not exactly this material and these colors, they're going to be very close to them. Okay. And with regard to floor plans, we just wanted to share, nothing has really changed in terms of the floor plan. What we have done is we've refined some of the design of the staff rooms, pretty much is really it, and also the cafeteria, as we've discussed, the warewash conveyor versus the door-type warewash, and that has to do with the trays versus, reusable trays versus not reusable, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Neil here has zoomed into the teacher workroom, staff lunchroom area. These are located centrally in the building, kind of right as the building turns. So what we've done is we've just refined and moved a few items, a few components around, and made the space much more open. We did not add any square footage, it's just a matter of kind of reconfiguring some of the walls. So we've reviewed this with David, and it seems to work pretty well.
This one looks a lot like it did before, but the second floor, we moved a couple offices around.
Yeah, so
So-
now go up. We're not used to PCs.
Not yet, we will be.
Yes.
So in this
Yeah.
configuration, we actually moved the staff lunchroom from, it was more in the middle here,
Center.
behind the stairs, so now it's, I think in a better location. It's kind of at the end of this passage, kind of more centrally located as well. So these areas with the math specialist and lab, they're now kind of in a more quiet corridor, which I think helps lay it out. And then we also took advantage of the lactation room is now where there used to be a little closet, so
Okay, thanks.
it's more efficient layout. And we think we think it's an improvement. Okay. And then still not enough. And I don't know if we did much
Yeah.
there.
Very riveting.
Yeah.
What's that?
Very riveting, the roof plan.
Very riveting. We spent a lot of time on it,
Oh.
surprisingly.
Sure, it's important.
The classrooms, I think there really isn't much update from what we showed you last time. Again, the windows, as we talked about, are pretty much set. There might be some minor tweaking of the proportions of the openings, the windows that open versus the fixed ones, but the amount of windows and the general proportions are going to be pretty much as you see them here.
I also want to point out that all the built-ins have been established as well. So all the classrooms will pretty much have a wall similar to the one you see on the right-hand side here, where it's a sliding marker board with storage. There's also a double sink and then a built-in teacher's desk. I don't think you can see the sink.
The
from
sink's to the
this,
right, yeah. Talk about the
Okay.
kitchen.
Yeah, so at our last meeting, we talked a little bit about this, and I know that there were a lot of questions with regard to what other districts are doing. So we did go back and talk a little bit more to folks that we've worked with. So what are other schools doing? We have talked to Amesbury. So Amesbury Elementary School is actually Shea Memorial. That school was completed in 2022. It opened without a conveyor. They were really primarily doing one-use, single-use. And so since then, they have now purchased a warewasher that accommodates trays. So they are going to reusable trays. They're melamine trays that have compartments. They have purchased the trays as well as flatware. So that's their plan, is to use the reusables. And everything else, the drinks are single use. So those are not, folks are not really using, I
Right.
think, Chris, you had asked about plates and glasses
Cups.
and all that. Our consultant, our kitchen food service consultant, says that the only time he's seen that is in private schools, where there's staffing and resources to kind of support that. But for the most part, what he's seeing is 50/50. So 50% of districts are using single use and disposing, which also could be the compostable. So those are the single use, and then 50% are actually going to trays and the tray wash.
Do we have, in our plan, do we have it set up so that we could use not only the reusable trays, but also the flatware?
So, yeah, so our kitchen is designed with this space in the upper corner. See where it says ware wash? That's the pot wash area. And it's designed to house what's called a door-type ware wash. So basically, the door lifts up and you slide the tray in and everything gets washed. That can accommodate forks and knives as well. So if you choose not to go with the trays, what we have specified as the base would accommodate that. If you elect to go with a tray wash, that machine is larger than the door-type machine, and it can be accommodated in this design. So you'll see in the pink rectangle, that's the smaller door type, but if you eliminate, or if you move the little storage, you want to point to the corner, that's storage, that's a storage shelf. If you move that out of the way, you slide the prep table or the clean table to the left, that will accommodate the larger tray wash.
The conveyor.
The larger tray wash is called a conveyor type.
But it also includes, you can include flatware
Yes.
that
Yep.
can be
Yes.
washed too.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Probably too early in the process, but is there a way to get like pictures of what this stuff looks like, or?
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
totally.
I had one I was going to include, but then I couldn't find one, a big conveyor. So
Just
it's like, that's
curious,
not-
like-
Conveyor ware wash, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, if you look up Hobart,
What does he look up?
Hobart.
Hobart,
Yep.
and just plug in,
Here you go.
Conveyor dishwasher.
yeah, there's a, what do they call, door type. So look up a door type dishwash, and then also the conveyor.
Oh, I looked, that was a conveyor.
Yeah, the conveyors can be really huge too. They're different, I think there are different
Sizes.
sizes. So it was kind of hard to pull one out and say, yeah, this is it.
Oh, you'll
But we
see how
know
this
it's
one's
gonna
skinnier.
fit. They're just large.
You lift it up and put it in.
Yeah.
That one is the conveyor.
I have a question.
Those are this is wider. Go ahead, Jen.
Between the door wash type and the conveyor type, I'm assuming there's an efficiency difference? Like whether manpower / water
Yeah.
usage?
The conveyor will be faster, so you could definitely just do your flatware on it, and it'll, run everything much quicker. What we've found in talking with other folks is that using the conveyor takes more staff. So if you're going to go, it's really a factor of just cleaning off the trays. So Lexington, for instance, at the Hastings School, I think some of you had visited Hastings. Again, they opened without the tray wash, and since have installed the tray wash. So they do a combined tray wash and compost. So they basically, but the drinks are still single use, so there'll be milk cartons or juice cartons, and those just get tossed. But they've trained the kids so that they're scraping their stuff into a compost trash bin, and then they'll bring everything to the window, and then the staff will take that and scrape whatever remaining and then run it through they don't run the conveyor between lunch periods though, because there's just not enough time between seatings. So Amesbury, actually, that school is designed for 425 students. They purchased over 1,000 pieces of both the trays and all of the flatware. So that accounts for the potential of trays breaking, kids throwing them in the trash. You'll lose flatware in the trash, but what I also noticed is that they purchased this thing that goes over the trash buckets that is magnetic, that supposedly
Catches it.
picks up, it catches the flatware. It's really kind of, it's just looking at their list. So there are ways around this. It's first cost is more in terms of purchasing all this stuff, but in the long run, it kind of depends. I don't know where the break even is, but I know that in speaking with Lexington, they're designing a new high school. They're they're purchasing trays and flatware for the high school, because that school is designed for 2,400 kids. So if you think about how much stuff you're purchasing to be thrown in the trash, that's a lot. So I think there's so many considerations. I think it kind of, leads to more questions on your end, but I think it's a separate discussion. We can only provide information from the folks that we know and their experience. It does require a little bit more staffing. In some cases, Lexington said it required more time. So they didn't add staff, they just added more time, probably at the end of the lunch period, so that they could do all the cleaning. I'm not sure, but this was also the comment from the Amesbury superintendent. She said that's the only big challenge, is just staffing for the additional stuff that needs to happen.
We would definitely need them to stay longer, because they kind of wrap it up and leave now.
Through the chair, I also think that it'd be time in between lunches too, which might be a crunch. I think we'd have to talk to our cafeteria staff and see where they are now and how much time they have to clean up in between lunches and get everything turned over in time for other students. I think that's also a consideration.
I think that was what you said, that there isn't time
There
in
isn't
between
time.
lunches. Yeah.
That's why
Not
they
enough for all the
purchase,
lunches.
that's why they purchase enough for the entire school population, and then some, because they're anticipating things breaking or getting thrown in the trash or what have you. So that's a consideration, and it's not, the one thing about the MSBA projects is that we have a set budget for FF&E. That's furniture, furnishings, and equipment. And small wares is part of that budget, and we typically don't budget enough to purchase 1,000 pieces of all of this stuff, right? So that's something that would need to be added and bumped up. So there's a lot of considerations. Also, the conveyor type machine is about $38,000 more than the standard door machine. It is currently not in our budget, but again, we're gonna go through this cost estimating exercise. We're gonna see what the added cost is. It's a net direct cost of $38,000 more, but there's markups, right? So when a contractor, a general contractor purchases and installs it, there's a little more added cost. So that's something we'll include as part of this next cost estimate, just as an alternate, so that you can decide whether it's worth it. You don't need to make the decision today. We know we can accommodate it. We are including the coiling opening as part of the build-out. We've accommodated the space. We maneuvered stuff a little bit. We moved the quiet dining out a little bit so that kids, when they're dropping stuff off, they're not blocking the door. So in terms of the design, it's really flexible. And what's curious is the rest of the Lexington elementary schools are all composting. So I don't know why. I didn't get a chance to ask why Hastings, I think because Hastings is newer and had the space to include the conveyor type. We designed that school also to have the ability to install that tray wash.
Yeah, I guess, through the chair, as we stand, like Vivian mentioned, we have an avenue to explore both, to see the costs of both, but there's also costs that won't be borne by the project, such as staffing and other resources, but at some point we'll come to a decision when we'll need to know, right? And it's not now, but I would encourage you to think what needs to happen, with the school department, what, where that decision comes from, or what meetings need to be held to figure out what needs to be outside of the project budget and maybe in the operating budget to support that decision, and sometimes that takes some time. So I would encourage you to think about what that process might be. We're here to provide any additional information if you need to help you make that decision, but I think that's kind of a school decision at this point. And, a lot of it does come down to cost, so we'll see the difference between the two options, and I think you'll be left with some info to kind of take back and consider to ultimately come to that decision. But I think it really becomes tough and a strain once we get really down to and closer to bidding to switch these things out. There's quite a bit of trickle-down effect that you'd be surprised of, and of course, just keeping an eye on the budget as well, so.
Nicole's on the phone, correct? I wonder if you could do some sort of back of the napkin, right? Like, at least gather the annual spend. We must be able to break it down, how much we're spending on the trays, and an extra hour a day for the CAF staff. At least, right, get some sort of, this is the break even. It wouldn't have to be, so it would take 3 years, it would take 7 years, 2 years, who knows, cost-wise, at a minimum.
Yeah, I can do something like that.
One tool that was part of the feasibility process was the MSBA provides kind of a table of costs, kind of before the school and after the school, and that is more from a district-wide perspective, just so you are thinking about what other, FTE equivalents or staff are required to support the school coming online, so you're not surprised with, oh, we need, additional custodians, or just, if it's an increase in square footage or anything like that. So maybe something similar to that, but just focused on the school might be helpful. We can share what we have, or if you have something like that already. But if you need something, please let us know.
Okay, one minor thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, one minor thing we didn't talk about is we reconfigured the receiving a little bit, so now there's a kind of like a ante-room where there's a washer and dryer, so that's a little bit nicer than it was before. I think it was originally in the kitchen, and now it's in this kind of cleaner area of the receiving, adjacent to the staff toilet. And then there's also like a little kitchenette in the receiving area for the custodians with a sink. And there's a mop sink right next to it.
We also found some space underneath the stair to support some storage, and that area can also be further developed for lost and found, which is something that I know all schools struggle with. So we're kind of designing that area. It is found space, but we're considering it storage. So it's not new program space, and it could be kind of a great space that will incorporate a permanent home for lost and found, but also provide additional storage for paper and whatever else needs to be stored for the teachers to use. It's pretty centrally located as well.
David will be happy.
So, right.
And I think we shared this at our last meeting. So you can, you want to point to where the window is.
This is the tray. We returned the trays.
And this hasn't been updated, but we're pushing that wall back a little bit to provide a little bit more separation to the entrance to the quiet dining, which is one
This
of the
door right
classy
here.
areas. Yep. All right, so we had wanted to schedule a sustainability update meeting, but realized that, we are so close to wrapping up design development. At the end of design development, next week, actually, we share our drawings with our sustainability consultants, and they will run a new energy model, so we'll have better information in about 3 weeks to share where we are. What we've done here is to just summarize what our building has in it, right? So in terms of the building, the high-performance standards, we already talked about the window-to-wall ratio of 22%. Our glazing, the glass that's on the windows are triple glazed, so we're no longer able to just use, insulated 2 panes of glass. It's now triple, just to meet the energy code. The roof has a really high R value, thickness of 8-inch average. In some cases it's more, in some cases just a little less, but that's an average. The walls are designed so that there is a continuous layer of insulation outside of the framing, and as an effective wall R value of 13.5, but actually when you look at the amount of insulation that we have as a continuous, and then also inside the framed areas, it's probably in the R24 or higher range. It's derated because when our energy, the energy modeler does his work, he takes all of, anywhere where air can be infiltrated or anywhere where there is a break in the plane, and that is, I can't explain it. There's a lot of it in terms of derating. It's so people are always going to be like, what is derating?
So when you have like any penetrations or metal that might, thermally bridge the cold temperatures outside into the building. So we kind of derate the wall because it's not perfectly insulated.
So while we have
There's other things in it.
a lot of our, a lot of thickness of insulation, it's derated to an average that's smaller. But it all gets folded into this energy model, which is required to be done so that we can be permitted. So we basically submit this as part of the permit. We'll also have to do an air infiltration test. So a blower door test will be done as part of this project. Again, part of the new energy code. And then our lighting system, all LEDs, a very good density, which is under, it's right now looking like 0.55 watts per square foot. It used to be that we'd be at 1 or just slightly under 1 watt per square foot. And then our HVAC system, we've already discussed early on, has not changed. We're ground source heat pumps, which are geothermal wells with a fan coil unit, a water-based system for distribution inside the building. Our plumbing system, again, low-flow fixtures, which also helps us get lead points. So at our next, I would say at the end of February is when we'll schedule a sustainability update. We'll review the findings of the energy model, and we'll look at actual numbers so that you can kind of see where we're coming from. And we did have an energy model done at schematic design, and that next slide does show us, I don't know if you all recall, but very early on, we had discussed at EUI, right, the energy use intensity for the building. We are looking at mass save incentives, and to really maximize those incentives, what our target is to be 25 EUI or less. And so our target is to be under 25.5 because it rounds down to 25. So at schematic design, we're at 25.1. And that's without having any detailed drawings. So now at design development, we'll have more information for our modeler to review, and we're anticipating that that's going to be closer to 25 or lower. So again, we'll provide that update in a month or so.
Okay, solar panels. So we did finally get an update from the the PPA, power purchasing agreement vendor, Onyx. They had to tweak their proposal. So just kind of, I'm going to give you kind of just an overview. There's kind of two paths you have. You can either purchase the solar panels yourself, like have a design build, you hire someone to design it and build it, or you enter into a power purchasing agreement with someone like Onyx, who will build everything and own everything when they're done, and then sell you the power at a cheaper rate than you're currently paying for your electricity. So you'll have this stuff they'll look essentially the same, but you'll be paying Onyx for the power that they provide to you at a lower rate, and you'll still be paying the balance of your energy use to Eversource, or whoever your vendor is. I think it's Eversource right now. So there's a couple of different points I just want to mention is the rebates and all the incentives, if you build it yourself, they all go to the town. Whereas if the PPA does it, they get all the benefits and rebates. The town is responsible for maintaining the system, so you may enter into an agreement with someone to maintain them. You do have to replace some things every 12 years or so, like inverters. And it's always possible things could break and you might need somebody to repair it. So that's kind of an operations consideration. The current study that we did showed the break-even point's a little bit less than 8 years. So in 8 years, you'll have saved more money than you'll have paid for the system. And then after that, you continue to benefit from it.
Question.
Some of the downsides of the...
Neil, the payback, the break-even point, I'm assuming that does not include the cost if this particular money was bonded.
No,
No.
it does not.
It's just,
This is just kind
The
of
upfront, yeah.
general information, I guess, at this point.
yeah, so if this amount of money was put on a bond, it would be a lot more, and therefore the payback would be at
That's
least
true.
twice as long.
That's true. So
Okay.
it would be a cost
wanted
to
to be
borrow
sure.
the money, yes. So we could,
There's a certain number of assumptions you made to arrive at that too, right? The system's not designed, you know.
that's right.
That would require further study to, if that was the route to go or
Yep.
needed to make a decision, but a good starting point.
Yep. And I put together a little spreadsheet. Let me just kind of jump to that, if you don't mind. So just a draft. You'll kind of see this first column is if you build the project yourself. The first column is the cost to the town. So you can kind of see up front it's over $3 million. But then the next column is what you'll get in incentives. So even the first year you'll get almost $845,000. So that'll pay a lot of the initial cost. And then over the next 20 years, you'll end up getting paid $2.4 million in incentives. So you're right, that the bond cost we probably should have factored in there. I might need to reach out to someone at Ways and Means to help me with those calculations. But yeah, that would probably help make this more realistic. Just to kind of keep going with this spreadsheet, so the second column is your incentives. The third column is the utility costs you would have spent if you didn't have any solar panels. So you'd essentially save first year $163,000 in energy costs. And then the last column, or the fourth column, is essentially the cumulative cash flow. So you'd start off, you'd have spent $3.4 million, and then slowly you'd kind of get back to zero at about year 8, year 9 or so. And then after that, you just start to, you'd reap the savings of having the panels. So I did something similar with the PPA, because they gave me a lot of their numbers as well. We used the same avoided utility costs, assuming it's the same size system with the battery and canopies in the parking lot. And you have to pay the PPA, this red column in the beginning. So you'll be paying them every year this amount of money for the electricity they're generating for you. And then you'll have avoided this much utility cost. And then this last third column is the net savings to the town using the PPA. So it is a substantial savings, even if you just go to PPA. It's $1.8 million over 22 years. But it's less than if you built it yourself. So it's really, that's kind of the decision. Is it worth it to build it yourself?
We also wanted to note that the column where it says capital cost to the town actually includes 15% of soft costs, so that's the difference. So the construction cost we're estimating would be $3 million, but there are soft costs, so we would hire a solar consultant to design the system, and we would fold it in and coordinate with our work, depending on when the design for the solar canopies happens. That is it.
Yeah, I think similar to where we're at with the kitchen design, there's a lot, I think, at the town level, our school department level, in determining if solar canopies are to be included, which would be required to get to net zero, correct?
Yeah.
Kind of at fork in the road, but there's probably more information you need, other questions, borrowing costs, how to fund it. One thing that wasn't discussed is the permitting that would be required in either case, but how that folds into the larger project, right? The project itself is on one timeline right now in terms of permitting. And so I think there's a couple of options to either fold that into the main job. I think we've got some action items to talk with planning in the planning board about how they see that permitting process actually unfolding. And I think there's pros and cons to doing it both ways too, but I think it's important we fold them into that conversation because I think it'll have a pretty big bearing on the decision. But we just don't want to, march forward with a certain set of assumptions and have something in our blind spot in terms of permitting and have that impact the quote-unquote main job. So a lot of it comes down to dollars and cents. I think, to summarize what's on the table with a PPA is, the convenience of not having to deal with maintenance, replacement, but certainly it kind of affects the break even, and while it makes some things easier, I think the efficiency and the break even point is getting so much more aggressive with the technology that it's really appetizing to look at how soon that payback is. It's no longer 15 or 20 years. So it's a really compelling decision, but I know there's probably more information you need and other discussions in town that need to happen to come to that decision, so.
Thank you. Through the chair, we have to bring on a solar expert anyway because we're designing the parking area to support the canopies, even if we don't put the canopies in. So all the underground conduit, right, wiring, piping, all that's going to be done. So we're going to need to have a canopy design agreed upon, even if we don't do it, to make sure that what we don't see is completed. Am I thinking about that correctly?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. We currently show like conduits to where we think they'll need them for the canopies and connecting back to the electrical room.
But having a design certainly helps
Yeah.
in terms of locating that. So I think a question was asked, Ed had asked via email, Ed Parsons, when do we need to make that decision? It doesn't have to be today, it could be in a month or 2 months. It really does depend on the permitting path. So I think our homework is we're going to reach out to planning and see what is really is required, and to kind of look at that timeline, whether we, because what we're hoping to do is be able to go to planning board and Concom in about a month and a half, 2 months max, so that we could keep going, because we want to be able to share where we are, make sure that we're accommodating any comments that they may have. But if we need to wait for a decision, and then there's also time required to design the system, which could be, I don't know, what did
Couple
he say?
months.
A couple of months.
Yeah.
So it could push the whole permitting. I think that's what Steve was alluding to, is if we want to fold the canopies in with the design of the school, it may push our permitting 2 months out, in which case, it may impact when we complete our drawings and go out to bid. So there's a lot to consider that we need to probably meet, outside of this meeting to kind of hash out some of these details. And then in the meantime, maybe Ways and Means can kind of run the numbers based on bonding as well, so that there's a clearer picture for that decision-making to happen. But,
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to one thing that's not in the numbers here is we're assuming we don't have to undo anything in the parking lot if the decision to go solar canopies is made too late. Of course, we've got, responsibility to let you know when that is, but the last thing we want to do is make that decision too late and have the contractor assume that there are no solar canopies to be included and either have to slow down their work or pause work or undo work to, make sure that coordination happens. So that's the last thing we want. Not that it's still a really great idea to ultimately have them, but knowing that the decision a lot comes down to the dollars and cents, that, we just want to make sure we're not having to slow down or stop or redo anything to make this happen, if that's the decision.
I just had 2 questions through the chair, thanks. Probably to Neil, and if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But I noticed it says battery on your proposal, or at least your drawings, but is that battery being stored in the building? So is there a space set aside for that, or is that up on the roof?
The battery will be out near the generator.
Okay.
It's kind of like a
Okay.
big thing.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. The size of the batteries is going to be
We didn't have
slightly
them
large.
in Lexington, right? In the back?
Yeah, I think.
They have a smaller one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I guess, we don't know yet, but would it connect to the building? Because ours currently at the high school and the middle school do not connect to our building, and they just go back onto the grid.
I don't know
so-
exactly how it works. I know you benefit because it's connected to the grid, so when there's high demand, the utility company uses your battery, and they pay you a lot for that.
Correct, yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah.
So, just for understanding point, the power purchase agreement would come out of like the regular budget with the school department. And if we wanted to go with buying the solar, we'd have to get that funded through town meeting. And we're kind of stuck on their schedule, which January's kind of past, but we'd
Yeah,
have to
but I
push
think-
stuff out till May.
I think we have to decide whether or not we're gonna be solar ready or not, and then we have plenty of time to get it past town meeting, as long as they're building the parking lot correctly and the roof supports correctly.
Okay.
I thought through the chair, we already decided that we're solar ready, right?
I thought we did.
yeah, we're building to
I
solar
thought we
ready.
did.
We're
Everything's in
already-
place for the panels. We just don't have that as
But
part
the
of the
parking
project.
lot,
We have conduits out to the
Okay.
parking lot for the
so then,
future
well, it's
canopies.
Steve's point about making sure we decide in time to not undo any work.
Well, he's just saying, like, because the exact size of the footings and where they are, we don't know that exactly. We have a lot of civil structures in the parking lot, like for stormwater recharge, so we want to be sure they're not interfering with
Right,
the.
so we have to decide something prior to construction, and then we can still get it funded
At a later date. Okay.
Correct, yeah.
All right.
Steve, maybe this is to you. If hypothetically and positively thinking, if the bids came in with enough space to afford the solar project with the amount that's already been allocated by town meeting, not that it wouldn't be a good idea to go back to town meeting, but would we have to go back to town meeting?
I think that's a question maybe more for town administration to answer. I don't know how, I don't know the mechanics of how it's being bonded and what happens with any potential savings, how that gets turned over, if it's turned over to the school department, to the town, or to a general fund. So I don't really know, to be honest with you. I think it's more of a question for maybe Paul and John to answer.
Again, not that it wouldn't be a good idea, but all I'm saying is, you had mentioned it may require another vote, and I'm saying if it's additional money, of course, it would require another vote, but if it's, can fit under the umbrella of the money that's already been allocated, then maybe that's a conversation that we need to have. So, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I have one question. I know that the solar is a good idea and it saves the world and all that. Well, maybe not in the next 4 years, but one issue in my head is I'm not sure I like the way the canopies look in the parking lot. And this is New England, and we have snow, and we have muck on top of everything, and like, remember we were talking about the awnings? Well, I spent quite a bit of time going in and out of Mass General in the last couple of months, and they have the awnings that they're kind of translucent, you can see through them, and they look terrible because they're always dirty. And I know you're not planning on doing the see-through ones, but I'm kind of nervous about having these canopies in the parking lot if they're going to look bad. And, sure, maybe it saves the planet a little bit, but I really don't want it to look bad. So
We don't want it to look bad either.
I'm a little tortured about that.
I feel like the teachers like the covered parking. I know that.
How would it be decided who gets the covered parking and who doesn't get the covered parking?
how much is there,
And
and-
the EV charging and all of that? Like, how many spots would there be, and how many solar panels would there be if we did
I think the
decide
whole
to
thing
put-
would be pretty covered, right?
Does anyone, through the chair, like, we just, the Stone Zoo just put the solar panels out in their parking lot, and perhaps that's a place to go
How's it
take a
look?
peek too, because,
Lexington,
That's just-
my Hastings that we all went to also had,
right.
Hastings, yeah.
yeah.
like to see what it looks like after the snow. But, you know,
Hastings and
it
Lexington.
does
Or
provide
in March, when everything looks dirty.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I mean,
talking about.
they're,
Yeah, I don't think
you
they-
can't see
solar
how,
They're kind of slow.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe.
The
you know,
snow
the
either
idea is that
slides
the
off.
snow doesn't stay on top, because
Right.
you want that exposed.
You want it to fall off,
Yeah.
right?
How close to the field would we be putting these? Because I can just see a lacrosse ball really damaging one pretty badly.
They're over every parking
We didn't bring the right
space, is that
drawing.
how it works?
I mean, most of them, I would think.
Where's this
They're
site plan?
individual?
No, it's like a big
Oh,
row
all right,
of-
okay, I get it.
So,
I mean, yeah, the Stone Zoo just, it looks nice.
It
I
looks
don't,
nice at the
yeah, it
Stone
looks
Zoo. I
nice,
thought it
yeah.
did, but,
In the summer, it kept the car a lot cooler.
yeah, it did. I agree.
so the study that Solar Design Associates did, they put the canopies, if, I don't know if you can kind of see where my cursor is, but in these intermediate
Can you zoom in?
medians. Yeah, let me zoom in. That's a good point.
The Discovery Museum in
like-
Acton has it.
Yeah, they have really high ones, actually.
Oh, okay.
I drive by it every morning.
there.
It's- So there'd be a row of, like where these trees are, essentially this whole zone of parking would be covered by a canopy, and so would this zone.
So just the central.
The central
Central.
ones.
Central, so
Yeah.
roughly how many spots is that?
Oh,
How many
I don't know,
panels?
60 or 80, something like that.
Okay. And 60 or 80 panels or parking spaces?
The panels, it's in the report, there's hundreds of them, I don't remember
Okay.
exactly how many. It was like 560 kilowatts of power, so depending on which panels they get. He did 2 studies, so there's like different manufacturers you can buy, they have different sizes and different power outputs, so.
And I think I asked this question, but I can't remember the answer. They're the same quality as the ones that go on your roof, right? They don't degrade any faster?
No, they don't.
Okay.
They're commercial grade, so to speak.
Okay.
But every solar panel does degrade a little bit. So we, in our numbers, calculated 0.5%
Yes, I did notice
degradation
that.
per year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you're thinking of the decision tree between no canopies, PPA, or to buy them outright and build them yourself, it really comes down to, you don't have to, right? That's one reason to decouple it from the main project. So from that sense, the project is not reliant on doing them, so it's really a yes or no. And if it's no, you don't need them, and no, you don't want to explore it, or if there's no clear directive from the town that they need to be on projects moving forward, or any net zero declaration or anything of that nature, it really comes down to, if it's a yes, then you have a decision of, you know, which route to go. So I think if you're trying to kind of whittle away at it, whether you do them or not, that's really the first step is, you know, don't get paralyzed between which is the most beneficial from a cost-benefit analysis of PPA or doing them directly. It's really whether you want to do them at all, right? I think that's where it starts.
And it's also 2 projects if you look at it as building and parking lot, right? Because you could just do the building and not do the parking lot, for example, or do them both together, so.
Good.
If you weren't going to do the parking lot, then you wouldn't bother to put in all the conduit and stuff, would you?
Well, unless it allows you
In the
to
future.
potentially do them in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, the best time to do that is,
No, I get it, but I'm just saying, if the decision was made not to do it, what you're saying is, but you might change your mind and do it in the future. Okay.
You don't want
Are
to be
any-
digging up your brand new parking lot.
Right.
Any lead points or incentives based on it just being solar ready? And the conduits both to the roof and to the parking lot? That's the only thing I would want to make sure of.
I'm not sure if, I know that if it's a PPA, they want to see a contract, a longer-term contract, so I'm not sure if we build it and don't actually put in the PVs, if we can get that credit for PVs, because there are lead credits for PV.
I was just going to say, Chris, we did, as part of the study with Solar Design Associates, look at just doing the rooftop solar, and it would produce about 40% of the power you need per year. So even if you decide you don't want to do the canopies, it probably makes sense to do the rooftop.
Oh, yeah,
And it wasn't that
definitely the
expensive. It was like,
rooftop.
I think, $400,000 or something like that, before
Purchase.
before the incentives, yeah. So there's a kind of a range of things you can do. It's just up to you what makes the most sense.
I think those particular decisions, we really need to include the town side, John and Paul, and Ways and Means, and planning, as you mentioned.
That wraps up our
At the end of the
presentation.
presentation?
Hand back the film.
You have other topics, Andrea, Steve?
We don't have anything.
Okay. Evan? I saw a guest on the participant list. Maybe they have since departed. Is no public comment online?
No hands raised.
Okay. We have a next meeting, I think, in February?
Yes, we already have that. It
Yeah.
is the end of February.
Everybody is so quiet.
I know.
I'm straining my ears to
Just
hear
February
everyone.
25th is our next meeting.
Yes.
Can be at 6.
I'm just old.
Yeah.
25th at 6:30?
6, yeah. No, 6 is fine. I was just, ski club's over by then.
Oh, did you go today?
I didn't actually go today, but I go usually. All right, anyone else? Any motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just-
Meeting adjourned. Oh,
I just want you to know it's 13 degrees out,
all right,
in
yeah.
case anyone was wondering.
It's hot.
I'm sure my son had to be yanked off that mountain at 5:15.